Hello, my name is Shanna Lucero, and I want to thank you for taking the time today to listen to this brief presentation on the economic concept of negative externalities. Economic concepts can be incredibly difficult to follow. I have had to reread text multiple times in order to grasp an idea. I have found it easier to understand these concepts when they are applied to something I can relate to. It is my goal during this presentation to help you understand the concept of negative externalities by first defining it and then applying this concept to an issue that impacts all of us, the declining honeybee population. So let's begin by defining a negative externality and the consequences of this type of external cost. A negative externality occurs when there are costs incurred by someone other than the producer and/or consumer of a good. In other words, costs are incurred by entities and/or people who receive no benefit from the good being produced. As a result of the negative externality, bystanders may be harmed, and without the careful evaluation of this external cost, the result can be an overuse of the good. Now we can try and apply this concept to something we can relate to, the declining honeybee population. The honeybee population has been on a decline for years, and it was in 2006 that this decline first became noticeable. Experts believe the disappearance of the honeybee is due to impaired immunity caused by nutritional stress, pathogens, and pesticides. This impaired immunity has been labeled colony collapse disorder. For our purposes, we are going to focus on the use of pesticides. Honeybees are a crucial component of our food supply. They pollinate 1/3 of our crops, a list of some of those crops seen here. In addition, the need of farmers to pollinate their crops has created businesses in contract pollination between farmers and keepers. Believe it or not, the honeybee is responsible for big business. The National Resource Defense Council estimates that the loss of the honeybee could result in a $15 billion loss to the United States alone. So as you can see, the economic impacts of an extinct honeybee will be felt by us all. So how does the decline in the population of the honeybee and the use of pesticides have anything to do with negative externalities? Let's look at it this way. Farmers who use pesticides, like Farmer Jim here, do so because it helps to control weeds, insects, fungus, parasites, and rodents from destroying their crops. This use benefits the farmer by helping to produce larger yields, which in turn means Farmer Jim brings home more profit from all of his hard work. But this also means that the consumer who purchases the produce that Farmer Jim sells at the local farmer's market will also benefit because Farmer Jim can lower his price. This sounds like a win-win, right? Not so fast. There are external costs that we need to consider. Farmer Bob, who is seen here, has an organic apple orchard. He chooses to only use all natural methods of pest control. The costs of doing so are higher, but he believes the quality of his product is higher, therefore he can charge a higher price to offset the additional expense of farming organically. Farmer Bob has a contract with Jill's beekeepers for pollination services. This service has become more and more expensive due to the shortage of honeybees. As a result, Farmer Bob's bottom line is suffering. Even though his yields are steady, the cost of doing business is growing. Farmer Bob will need to consider alternative methods of pollination, which may decrease his yield and in turn his profit. But this also means that the consumer who purchased the apples from Farmer Bob's farm will have to pay more at the local farmer's market to help him cover his operating costs. So now, with this example, can we identify the external costs of using harmful pesticides? Remember, a negative externality occurs when there are costs incurred by someone other than the producer and/or consumer of the good. Let's take a look at Farmer Jim. Farmer Jim only incurs the private cost for the use of his pesticides. Presumably, this is the cost of and the application of the pesticide itself. Farmer Bob incurs the external cost of pesticide use with the payment of higher fees to Jill's beekeepers. Jill, who owns Jill's beekeepers, incurs an external cost of pesticide use by having to replace dead bees. She has had to pass the costs of replacing the bees and the liability of pesticide use down to her customers. As a result, her business has suffered through the loss of clients. Lastly, as a result of higher production costs incurred by Farmer Bob, as a result of the external cost of pesticide use, the consumers of his produce are now faced with higher prices at the grocery store. The negative externalities of the use of pesticides by Farmer Jim and others like him are the costs paid by the farmers, the consumers, and the beekeepers dependent on the honeybee. I hope this was helpful in your understanding of negative externalities. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and watch this presentation.